Hi everybody, my name is Coleman. Today was day 3 of the Cambridge Conference on Catastrophic Risk for 2020, and I just wanted to share some of my insights from the third day and some of the larger things I've been thinking about global catastrophic risk through this conference so far.
What are the forces, challenges, and ideas that define the 21st century? Conversations to understand the greatest figures and stories of today to create a better tomorrow. This is the 21st Talks podcast.
Hi everybody, my name is Coleman Snell. This is day 2 of the recap of Cambridge's conference on catastrophic risk 2020 from the perspective of a young person who is entering the field and who really loves this field. My name is Coleman Snell and I study philosophy and politics as well as global risk at the University of Puget Sound near Seattle, and this has been my first academic conference, and here's a quick recap of day 3. So one of my really big takeaways from today was the idea from Didi Nwaneri as well as Bentley Allen about how in a capitalist society, no one checks the rich, no one checks the powerful, and that being a really fundamental issue when it comes to actually taking effective action against these global systems that certain people have investments in, both literally investments as well as their heart is in it, right? And I think that is so interesting because, and especially given Bentley Allen's idea that energy was disempowered from its ability to actually check the powerful and check the power of capital when it switched from coal to oil, because oil can be outsourced to other people and it can be a race to the bottom, was absolutely fascinating. And this idea of inequality creating opportunity for people to actually create and cultivate new forms of entrepreneurship as well as new forms of battling these problems. And I think that is really interesting given what I talked about last night, because it kind of answers this question of how can we get people involved on all strata of our society, on whatever way the ladder of oppression lays it out for us, right? And I think that is really important. And one of the biggest takeaways also from today is the idea of social ontology and who we are, how the system creates our identities of self as well as the narratives we participate in, right? How that affects our assessment of global catastrophic risk, and also how we limit our own abilities to participate in global catastrophic risk given a basis in these certain social narratives. This idea that it is really hard, it's really challenging to do anything effective, right? It's totally fair, but that is usually nips in the bud any potential for most working class folks who are totally capable of doing really powerful things for the world around us. It nips their ability to do things in the bud because of doubt. And that's a narrative. That's something that's imprinted from the society, right? That's a damage done onto people that then manifests itself in a psychic presentation that limits people's ability to actually change the system. The system eliminates potential for change. That's one of the reasons why it probably has survived this long, not working for people very well. It's hard to rebel against the system when it's convinced you that the only way to somehow do well in it is to continue furthering the ideology. Right? It's hard to break out capitalism when you're stuck in the idea that you can just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, right? But the only way to actually do that now, we're in a world where the best way to do that is by kind of trying to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. So it's the fulfillment of the ideology in even attempts to dissuade the ideology. It's limiting, it's stagnating our ability to correct ourselves, check who we are and how we want the world to be. And I think global catastrophic risk is fundamentally about understanding the reasons for the risks, right? Whether it's scientific, as we saw from the fantastic talk by the NASA scientist on near-Earth objects and how to respond to them. I feel like that component of scientifically understanding these things is absolutely important. But as I feel Ndidi pointed out, as well as Alan quite thoroughly, is the importance of understanding the social context that they exist within. That's the social science side of global risk, and it's equally as important as the scientific. And I think a great way of looking at it, for me at least at this point in my journey into this field, is seeing the work stemming from robust intellectual inspection of base ideas, right? Base stats, or being really, really adherent to really getting a clear vision of history or a clear take on what is happening to the best of our ability, given our best scientific instruments or, historical practices or whatever. And then from that, asking ourselves how that ties into another field, right? It's taking one field and injecting it with ideas from another. And when I talked with Aditi last night, that was her primary recommendation for doing well in academia. And I just doing well as a thinker overall, really. That's the important thing there. It's about having ideas that work. It's about knowing how to find the right ideas. And the thing about global risk is we're on a time span that is pretty short. It's the idea of deciding your time frame. That's something Bentley Allen said today. Decide the time frame you want to work within. And that is hard. That is hard when you're bombarded by ideas and stats on the short-term negative consequences, disastrous consequences of climate change. And then also the midterm consequences of AI, of it becoming the same level of intelligence as we are, of general AI, and the short-term to midterm implications of automation. Meanwhile, there's still this completely other force of cosmic considerations, right? A time span that exceeds any functionally useful human time scale, right? It's the Isaac Asimov deep history, It's expanding beyond hundreds of thousands of life spans into, into the great future, the great forward. And I think that existential risk is a field where shifting between both ways, both time spans, whether it's super, super short term, right? It's like, okay, what things am I going to do this weekend even? What actions am I going to take against this right now, here and now, to actually get some level of survivability against climate change? Or decrease the likelihood of nuclear weapons destroying the Earth just a little bit, just enough. But existential risk is shifting between that time span, that pragmatic time span, and the long term, right? And asking ourselves, we're rational creatures to a certain extent. What are the limits of our rationality? What do they tell us, right? And then asking yourself, okay, but I'm also a highly emotional, human creature. What do my emotions tell me? And I think Bentley's point today about his emotions telling him to provide a better world for his children is really speaking and really telling to a mechanism that goes on in most people who study existential risk's brains, right? It's this calculation between theoretical and the actual consequences, right? And I think that currently we're at a stage in global existential risk where that horizon is starting to become a little bit more uniform. We're starting to see that these big threats that we are discussing are not just things that are limited, right? We're feeling more of the pains of climate change, and not just as a research community, but also as a global community, right? And we're starting to feel more of the effects of, pandemics, understandably. 2020 has been a year that's shown us these disasters aren't just the theoretical things. They're real. And because of that, our study is real. Your study is real if you're a researcher. It's powerful. It's invigorating. I think that's a point that we can talk about more. Get more folks on board with this project of global catastrophic risk. The world is complex and we need a lot of clever people, and we sure as hell have a lot of those already. That is a major point from the conference so far for me. Seeing how many brilliant people already in this field. It gives me hope. Genuinely, it gives me hope. But we always need more. We'll continue to need more. Every additional person we can get into global catastrophic risk, really get into it, orient their sense of purpose, their desire for their career, for a certain amount of their hobbies, for the discussions they decide to have with friends, orient as much of themselves behind global risk as they want to. The more people we can get to do that, each one of those people is one less reason to be pessimistic. I trust in the power of passion translating to action. And that is one of my biggest reflections from today. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will talk to you all tomorrow, and check out the rest of the podcast episodes. I really appreciate you guys listening. This is Coleman with 21st Talks, a future and I guess current global catastrophic risk researcher, specializing in philosophy and global risk. Okay, I'm going to go let my dog out, but thank you guys for listening.